***The Journey of Love. Arjun and Mia's story. Arjun had always been a quiet observer, a young man who'd grown up amidst the rugged beauty of rural Nepal. Life in his small village had been hard, but its simplicity had also been peaceful. His family worked on a farm, tending crops and taking pride in the modest life they had built. However, when Arjun turned 20, he made a decision that would change the trajectory of his life forever. He left Nepal in search of better opportunities in Australia. The promise of financial stability, a chance to send money home to his family, and the allure of a bigger world drew him to Sydney, where he quickly found a job in Parramatta as a construction worker. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a means to an end. With its bustling streets and diverse population, Sydney was a far cry from his peaceful, serene village. Yet, even as he adapted to the fast-paced city life, Arjun couldn't shake his loneliness. Each morning, Arjun rode the train from Parramatta to the city, a daily ritual that had become a silent part of his routine. The train ride was always crowded, filled with strangers, each of them locked in their own worlds. Yet, amidst the throng of commuters, there was one person who caught his eye day after day: Mia. Mia was different. She stood out in a way that made her impossible to ignore. There was something captivating about her presence, a blend of grace and confidence that drew Arjun in. She would always sit in the same spot, nose buried in a book or lost in her thoughts, her hair cascading over her shoulders in soft waves. Arjun found himself looking at her more often than he should have, his heart beating a little faster whenever their eyes met, even if only for a second. At first, the attraction was subtle, fleeting, a quick glance, a shy smile exchanged from across the train car. But over the weeks, something shifted. Arjun found himself eager for their daily encounters, though they spoke nothing to each other. They were two strangers caught in the same daily rhythm, existing in the same space yet never connecting beyond the shared silence of the commute. It was on one fateful morning, after weeks of silent observation, that Arjun finally found the courage to speak to her. "Do you know why trains are always late?" he asked, his voice light and hesitant, as if testing the waters. Mia looked up from her book, surprised by the question, and then, as if the words had sparked something in her, she smiled. It wasn't just a polite smile. It was the kind of smile that reached her eyes and made Arjun feel like maybe, just maybe, this was the moment to take the leap. "Because they're always running behind on their dreams?" Mia replied, her voice teasing, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Arjun laughed, the sound of it filling the small space between them. "Ah, so you think trains are dreamers, too?" Mia smiled again, the ice finally broken. "I think anything can be a dreamer, if you look hard enough." From that moment on, everything changed. They began to talk more, initially about the trivial things, the annoyances of commuting, the weather, the food they loved, and the books Mia was reading. Arjun was fascinated by how easily Mia spoke, her voice calm and comforting, as though their shared silence for weeks had finally given birth to something deeper. Mia, for her part, was just as intrigued by Arjun. He was different from the other men she'd met in her life. He was quiet, thoughtful, and kind. There was something about his humble nature, his gentle smile, and the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his family back in Nepal that made her feel like there was more to him than met the eye. As the days turned into weeks, they began to spend more time together outside of their train rides. They started meeting for coffee after work, walking through the parks in the evening, and talking late into the night about their hopes, fears, and dreams. Arjun would share stories about his childhood in Nepal, the beauty of the Himalayan mountains, and the love and respect he had for his family. Mia would tell him about her work as an architect, the pressure of her job, and how she had always felt like something was missing in her life. Despite the growing connection between them, there was still an unspoken tension. Arjun was aware of the fragility of his situation. His visa was a constant worry, and he knew that, sooner or later, he might have to return to Nepal. The thought of leaving Mia behind was unbearable, but the reality of his visa status was a problem he could not ignore. Mia, too, had her reservations. She had been in relationships before, but none had ever felt quite as serious or as significant as her connection with Arjun. She was scared. Scared of the timing. Scared of the idea that their connection might be fleeting. But she couldn't deny the way she felt about him. Every time he smiled, every time their hands brushed, she felt something real, something she hadn't felt in years. Their bond was undeniable, yet, the future loomed over them, a shadow neither could escape. One night, Arjun invited Mia to a rooftop restaurant in the city. The sky was clear, the stars twinkling above as they sat at a small table overlooking the twinkling lights of Sydney. It was the perfect night for something special. As the waiter brought their food, Arjun leaned in, looking into Mia's eyes with a seriousness that made her heart skip a beat. "Mia," he began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking a lot about us. About what happens when my visa expires." Mia's heart sank. She had been dreading this moment, but she had been trying to ignore it, trying to pretend that the future wasn't something they had to confront. "I don't want to leave," Arjun continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I don't want to leave you, Mia. But I don't know what to do." Mia took a deep breath, her emotions swirling. "We'll figure it out. Maybe you can get a new visa. Maybe we can do something." But deep down, both of them knew it wasn't that simple. The reality of the situation was unavoidable. Arjun had already tried to extend his visa, but without enough money for legal fees and without a job that could sponsor him, there were few options left. As the days passed, the weight of his departure became heavier. Arjun tried to stay hopeful, but he couldn't deny the truth. He had to go back to Nepal. It was a matter of time. Mia tried to hold on, suggesting that they fight for their relationship, that they try long distance, but Arjun was afraid. The idea of keeping their love alive across the miles felt impossible, like they would slowly fade from each other's lives. The thought of losing Mia was unbearable, and so, with a heavy heart, Arjun made the decision to return to Nepal, leaving Mia behind. Their farewell was heart-wrenching. There were no grand promises, no speeches about staying in touch forever. There were just two people standing at the airport, hearts heavy with the knowledge that they were saying goodbye. Life back in Nepal was not as Arjun had imagined it would be. He returned to his family's home in the hills, but the joy of being back home was overshadowed by the pressure that came with it. His family had already arranged for him to marry Priya, a childhood friend from his village. She was a kind and beautiful woman, but Arjun had never felt anything for her. Yet, he felt the weight of duty and tradition pulling him in that direction. He was torn. His love for Mia was undeniable, but the pull of family, culture, and responsibility was just as strong. Arjun didn't know how to navigate this. He hadn't planned on returning to Nepal to find his life already mapped out for him. Meanwhile, Mia threw herself into her work in Sydney, but the ache of missing Arjun never fully left. She tried to move on, but she couldn't forget him. His absence was like a hole in her heart that no one else could fill. And when Arjun's messages started becoming fewer and further between, Mia began to wonder if he had truly moved on. Then, one day, Mia saw a photo on social media, Arjun, standing with Priya, a smile on his face, with the caption, "Engagement Day." #blessed. Her heart shattered. She couldn't believe it. The man she had loved, the man who had promised her he'd always choose her, was now engaged to someone else. She tried to push it aside, but the pain was too much. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The following night, Mia called Arjun, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me you were engaged?" Arjun's face went pale as he listened to her words. He had wanted to tell her, but the pressure from his family had been too much. He had been silent, thinking that it was for the best. "I never wanted this, Mia. I didn't want to hurt you," he said, his voice breaking. "I was too afraid. But now I know that it's you. It's always been you." Mia was silent for a long moment. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Arjun. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this." Despite the pain and betrayal, something inside Mia told her she wasn't ready to let go. She booked a flight to Nepal, not knowing what would happen, but knowing she needed closure, or maybe, a second chance. When she arrived in Nepal, she found Arjun standing alone in a field, his eyes filled with surprise and guilt when he saw her. He looked different, older, like the weight of his decisions had taken a toll on him. "Mia," he whispered, his voice full of emotion. "You came." "I came because I still love you, Arjun," Mia said, her voice trembling. "But I can't keep loving someone who doesn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." Arjun stepped forward, his heart racing. "I was wrong. I was afraid of losing you, and in doing so, I almost lost you. But I'm here, and I want to make things right. I want to be with you." Mia looked at him, her eyes searching his. "Then prove it. Fight for me. Fight for us." And in that moment, Arjun realized that his love for Mia was stronger than any obligation, stronger than any tradition. He had been wrong, but he wasn't too late. Arjun and Mia's journey was just beginning. They faced family opposition, cultural expectations, and financial difficulties, but together, they found a way. They married in Nepal, not in a grand ceremony, but in a small gathering with their loved ones. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. They returned to Sydney, where Mia's career continued to thrive, and Arjun found work in construction. Though their path was still uncertain, they faced it together, hand in hand, knowing that no matter the challenges, they had each other. Their love had survived the tests of time, distance, and culture, and in the end, it was stronger for it.